Hello my dear students, my name is Aayushi Bansal and welcome to my YouTube channel. So now let's start the marathon revision of the very important chapter, Levy and Collection of Taxes. Students, before starting this chapter, let's understand a very important concept, that is supply. Now supply are of two kinds. First it is inward supply, second it is outward supply. These are the two broad categories of supply. Now inward supply means whenever we receive something, and outward supply means whenever we provide something to the other person. Now students, the next question that they might ask you in the examination, which is a taxable event under GST. So in the GST, under GST, taxable event means that event, that activity when supply of goods or services or both take place. It means we can say if there is no supply, there shall be no GST. Okay. Now the next question which is very important for the examination is that how many parameters are there in the GST. It means how many activities, how many transactions, how many parameters, basic parameters are there. It means if those parameters will not be included in any activity, that activity will not be considered as supply. Okay, so I am categorizing those parameters into two categories. Okay, the very first category which I am talking is the basic parameters. Basic parameters. The first parameter is supply must be made for a goods or services. Everything has been mentioned in every book, so don't worry, just read it out here. Just revise with me. Supply must be goods or services. It means if we supply only money to the second person, as we know, goods means movable property, not immovable property, and even money and securities are not either included in the goods and not in the services. Okay, so they said that supply must be made of a goods or services. You can recall this thing in a one sentence. If there is no G or S, so there will be no T. It means if there is no goods or services, there will be no GST, goods and service tax. Okay. The second parameter under the basic parameter is supply must be made for a consideration. It means consideration must be involved. Now consideration can either be monetary consideration or non-monetary consideration. It does not affect our transaction, but yes, there must be some consideration. Okay. The third activity is supply must be made in the course or furtherance of business. Supply must be made in the course or furtherance of business. Now students, try to understand. Course of business means that it is the trading activity of that business. For example, if a businessman is going to sell these calculators, so the course of business is to sell or purchase these calculators. Now what do you mean by furtherance of business? So furtherance of business means that activity which is very necessitated, which is very necessary to grow that business. Okay, that is in the furtherance of business. I hope you got my points. Okay, now the fourth parameter which I am saying is additional parameters. The fourth parameter is supply must be made by a taxable person. It means, for example, if I give any calculator to my friend, so it does not supply and it does not constitute supply under GST, because in that case I am not a taxable person. Supply must be made by a taxable person. Okay. Next, fifth is supply must be a taxable supply. Now what do you mean by taxable supply? It means that supply on which GST is levied. For example, students, we all know on alcoholic liquid for human consumption there is no GST, and even in the case of petrol, high-speed diesel, aviation turbine fuel, till now there is no GST. So supply must be made of a taxable supply, not of a non-taxable supply. Okay, so I hope you got these points. If there is any query, you can ask me. So have you got any query in these points? I hope there is no query. Very good. And yes, the sixth point is supply must be made within the taxable territory. Now taxable territory means that it must be made within the India. For example, student, just assume that a person who is residing in US provides some goods to UK. So does our India levy will attract GST in this transaction? No, we don't have any relation with this transaction now. So it must be within the taxable territory, that is in India. Okay. Now students, for this point, that is goods or services, there is no exception. It means if there is not any goods or neither any services, so there will be no GST. But for the second and third point, there are exceptions. Yes, there are some exceptions. It means, for example, if a person is not paying some consideration, still we can say that this activity is known as supply under GST. Okay. Now those exceptions are mentioned in the schedule number. Which schedule I have told you? Yes, schedule number 1 of CGST Act 2017. Now the next thing is supply must be made in the course or furtherance of business, but yes, still there is a one point, there is a single transaction, there is a single exception of this point, that if goods are not provided in the course or furtherance of business, still those goods are known as supply under GST. Okay, we will talk about it, yes, for sure. Now the next point is, so here they have talked about those exceptions. I will cover these exceptions in a later point. Okay. Now the next is scope of supply. Students, I have never told you, even in the class or even in the revisionary sessions or even in the MCQ session, that recall, remind or learn every single section number, because even I know we are not computers, or we do not have any artificial intelligence. We are human beings, so our memory capability is a limited point. Okay, so but you have to remember, yes, you have to learn the important section numbers. So one of that important section number is section number 7. Now students, in section number 7, what happens is that section 7 is categorized into two parts. The very first is section 7 subsection number 1. Section 7 subsection 1, and the second is section 7 subsection number 2. Now students, this section 7 covers the scope of supply. It means whenever when we will say that this is a supply under GST, or when we say that this is not a supply under GST. Okay. In section number 7 subsection number 1, the inclusions are mentioned here. It means these points will be included in the supply, and in subsection number 2, exclusions are mentioned there. For example, if an employee is giving his service to the employer in the course of business or in the course of employment, so it will not be considered as supply under GST. That is the exclusion. So all those exclusions have been mentioned in the subsection number 2. Okay. Now afterwards, it has some clauses. For example, clause number A, section 7 subsection 1, which has mentioned in the inclusions. Now its clause number A said that supply will include all forms of supply. All forms of supply means, for example, if there is a sale, there is a transfer, there is a barter system, exchange, lease, license, rental, disposal of, everything will be including in the supply. Now what do you mean by these forms of supply? Sale means whenever we sold any product to any person. Transfer means that we are transferring the title of that product to any other person in the name of any other person. Next is barter. Now most of the students got confused between the meanings of barter and exchange, so let's understand it. Students, barter means when we provide any goods or services in lieu of receiving any goods or services. It means there must be a non-monetary consideration when we are receiving any goods or services. So we are giving any non-monetary consideration, not monetary consideration. For example, suppose we said to another person, just give me this exclusive shirt, just give me this shirt which is very nice, and in return of it I will file your income tax return. So that is a barter system. Now what do you mean by exchange system? Is exchange and barter the same? So not. Exchange means, students, on festivals and very frequently you are used to hear these kind of ads, exchange offer on car. So do they actually give you a new car in the exchange of old car? No. What they actually do is, suppose if you choose to purchase a car of rupees 10 lakhs and the value of your old car is 7 lakhs, so they will say you, okay, give us this non-monetary consideration, that is a car worth rupees 7 lakh, plus you have to provide rupees 3 lakh as monetary consideration. So exchange means when there is non-monetary plus monetary consideration, both will be included. Okay. As this is a marathon revision series, so I am actually using a high speed pronunciation of these words. Okay, I hope you are fine with it. Okay, next is, students, clause number B. Now clause B says, whenever there shall be import of services, whenever, students, clause C said, whenever there shall be a import of services. Import of services means that we are receiving the services in India from the outside India, from the outside the taxable territory, for a consideration. It means we have paid the consideration for receiving these services. Import of services, not import of goods. Students, please listen this carefully. This is a case of import of services, not import of goods. Okay, import of services for consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. It means they said if you have imported, if you have received the services for which you have paid the consideration, and that services are a kind of import, that means you receive those services from outside India. So whether they are for your business, whether you have received that services in the course or furtherance of your business or not, these will be considered as supply under GST because our Indian currency is going outside. Okay, now so this is the only exception of this point, is this parameter, that is supply in the course or furtherance of business. So this exception has been mentioned in section 7 subsection 1 clause number B. I hope you got this point. Okay, now the clause number C is here. So students, in clause number C they said the activity specified in schedule 1, in which what I have told you about the schedule 1. Schedule 1 covers those activities which are made or agreed to be made even without consideration. It means even we do not have pay any kind of consideration to the other person, but they are saying your activity will be considered as GST. Now the point is, ma'am, why they are doing this? It means they are attracting the GST even the transaction does not involve any kind of consideration. Students, let's understand why they are doing this part in there. Okay, actually what happened, just wait students. Student, just wait for a second, okay. Okay, let's do it. Now students, I have told you about the consideration pointer. Suppose there are two persons. For example, there is a person known as Mr. Chintamani and the second person here is Mr. Dholak. Now Chintamani and Dholak are brothers. Actually they are brothers. Okay, so Chintamani has a business, is running a business of laptops. Now Dholak said, give me a laptop worth rupees 80,000. Chintamani said to the Dholak, let's do one thing. Actually I'm not showing this transaction in my books of account. He asked why. He said, let's do one thing, just take this laptop and do not pay any consideration for it. Okay, and we will not show in the books of account. So due to that purpose, what happened, I will not charge any GST, and GST department will not get to know about this transaction. They will think that there is no consideration as I have gifted you this thing. But practically what is happening, Chintamani said to Dholak, do not give me this amount in my bank account. We will not show this transaction in the books of account, and accordingly we can save our GST part. You can give me this money in cash and I will put this cash into my sofa. Okay, so to remove these kind of tax evasions, GST department, GST law has included a term that is schedule number 1, okay, which includes those activities that are even without the consideration. So I hope you got my point. On students, only on this point, that is schedule 1, it is expected that 4 marks question can be come into examination. Yes, we will elaborate this point whenever actually I am explaining all the points with the sequence of the book so that you can relate with it. Okay, now there is a clause number D, section 7 subsection 1 clause D. Clause D has been omitted now, so you can just cut it out here. Okay, it has been omitted. It has been omitted. Yes student, actually what happened is that instead of section 7 subsection 1 clause D, they have removed this clause and they have inserted a new clause, that is section 7 subsection 1 clause number, what is the clause number? Yes, it's section 7 subsection number 1A, that is section 7 subsection 1 clause number 1A. Okay, they have introduced this point. I am again writing it so that you guys do not get confused. Section 7 subsection 1 clause number 1A. Okay, so they have removed the clause number D and they have inserted a clause number 1A which states that certain activities in which we got confused, that either these activities should be known as supply of goods or supply of services. They have cleared it out that you should call these transactions as supply of goods or supply of services. Okay, so in section 7 subsection 1 clause 1A, they included schedule number 2 of CGST Act 2017, okay, which specifies these activities should be transacted as supply of goods or supply of services. Okay, I hope you got my point now. So now what is the exclusion point, that is section 7 subsection 2. So students, in section 7 subsection 2, they basically includes 2 points. First of all, negative list. I hope you all know about the negative list. Don't worry, if you do not even know about the negative list, you can find out if you want to just revise the negative list, you can revise it here. If you want to understand this topic of negative list in a very elaborated manner, so students, my sessions for CMA Intermediate, this topic negative list is available on an Academy platform at total free of cost. If you want this link, you can write it in the comment section. I will share the link with you. Okay, it has already been uploaded. Yes. Now students, in section 7 subsection 2 of CGST 2017, the very first point is of negative list. In negative list, they said that whatever activity we will include in the negative list, it will neither be constituted as supply nor as neither be construed as a supply of goods nor as supply of services. So negative list, schedule number 3. It means till now we have covered the 3 schedules, schedule 1, schedule 2 and schedule 3. Okay. For example, negative list, example students, that is supply of services by an employee to employer in the relationship of his employment, that is under negative list. Okay, great. Now these are the negative list, schedule 3, but in which manner we are going to do these negative list, students, that later on, even in this section, even in this session or in the next session, I will tell you about the schedule 1, schedule 2 and schedule 3. So we will cover all the schedules at a one point. Okay. Now, what is the next point here? That first is whenever the activity will be specified in schedule 3. Now, what is the next activity? So, student, the next activity which which is outside the purview of supply is when central government, state government, union territory, local authority, they provide any service in the capacity of public authority. Okay, and which are those activities? So, they said that as may be notified by the government on the recommendation of the GST Council. Okay. That means if they are providing any service in the performance of public authority, that shall not be constituted as supply. Okay. In section 7 subsection 3, they again write it as these are the supply of goods, not a supply of service, and this will be considered as supply of service, not a supply of goods. Okay, so I hope you got my point. Now the next point is, it's on page number page number 15. Page number 15, yes. Okay, now students, if you are referring any other book, you can refer there. Don't worry, in every book, in each and every book, law is same, so do not worry and do not change your book at this point of time. Okay, and yes, one more important announcement for you guys, and that announcement is, students, if you want to do, I have already told you that only the revision of a particular subject is not enough for your examination. You actually require to do a lot of practice of the previous year questions, MTP questions, bit questions which are introduced by the institute. So if you want to practice all those questions with me in a live session, you can join me on the platform of Unacademy. Those who want to join me, they can contact me at the given number which is given in the description below, or students, you can write that you want the link. We will share the link directly in the comment section. Okay, so if you want this, let me know. So students, the series is previous year question series, but it has also included the MTP questions, bit questions and all. Okay, so join free series with me, that is Aayushi Bansal, on the platform of Unacademy, and yes, just ace your examination preparation. Okay, yes students. Now let's start. The next point, alcoholic liquid license, grant thereof not to be treated as supply of goods or services. Student, it means whenever, first of all students, if any person wants to supply alcoholic liquid, so they have to take the license from the government. Now the government said, if they are provided license for the alcoholic liquor, if they are provided the license for the alcoholic liquor, so providing that license is neither constituted as supply of goods nor a supply of service. That's it. Okay. What is the reason that they do not contribute this part in GST? Because they said that state government will handle them by themselves. That's why student, in some states supply of alcoholic liquor is banned and in some state it is allowed. Okay. So this is supply of alcoholic liquor license. Yes, if anyone wants, if in case any person, whenever they wants to supply the alcoholic liquor, they have to take the license for it, and that license, supply of that license will never consider as supply of goods or supply of service. That's it. Okay. So this section is just here. You can read it from here. Now There are some changes, that is they have omit the clause number D, which I have already told you, so do not so there is no requirement to read it again from there. Okay, we have covered these points that the new subsection 1A has been introduced and all the provisions are changed accordingly. Okay, students, now let's start one point. Yes students, and yes, there is one very important announcement, and that announcement is, students, before when this transaction, when the clause number D, they have removed the clause number D, what they have actually done is that they have introduced section 7 subsection 1 clause 1A, but now the new name is section 7, it's subsection 1A. Okay, so you can write it in your notebooks also. Might be in your books, in your old edition books it is like this, but now it is not like this, it is like this. Okay, section 7 subsection 1A. Okay, next is supply made in the course of furtherance of business. So I have already told you that in the course of furtherance of business means, in the course of business means when they carries out the certain activities regularly, which is regular activity for running the trade or commerce. And in the furtherance of business means, for example, students, if a person wants to grow their business in South India also, and they said to a person, just please find out the opportunities there. So when they give the fees to the another person, that is they are receiving the services, they are receiving, that is there is an inward supply of service of another person for evaluating the project. It means they are receiving those services in the furtherance of business. Okay, here are some examples. You can do the examples by yourself. In case of any query or any doubt in examples, you can for sure ask me. Next is section 7 subsection 1 clause A. We have already covered it. Okay, these all are the examples. Students, example number 4 is very important. Just mark it, very important. It is illegal activity versus prohibited activity. Generally we assume that illegal activity and prohibited activity both will not cover under GST, but it is not correct. Illegal activity is covered under GST, but prohibited is not. What is the difference between illegal activity and prohibited activity? Illegal activity, like someone steals a mobile of any person and they sell it in any thief market, so it will be constituted as supply under GST and GST shall be levied. But if a person sell any kind of narcotic drug, it is a prohibited activity and there shall be no GST on that point. It is punishable in the law, it is crime. Okay, now the next is, we have covered all these points of barter system, exchange, license means that you are giving a right to another person to do something and all. Okay, next is definition of consideration. Student, definition of consideration is very important. What is the definition of consideration? Let's just read it. Write it as very important. Yes, they have asked it in the examination several times. Consideration in relation to supply of goods or services or both means any payment which is made or which is to be made. It means which is to be made in the future, whether in money or otherwise. It means whether it is a monetary consideration or non-monetary consideration, and it will also include if that consideration is given by any third person. But if that third person is the central government or state government, it means if they have provided any kind of subsidy for that activity, so it will not be considered as consideration. But yes, if subsidy is given by any other person, for example by any other corporate house, so it will be considered as consideration. But if subsidy is given by central government or state government, it will not be considered as subsidy. Okay, next is, student, even if a person pays any kind of monetary value to do this act or to not do this act, so even in that case this will be covered as consideration. I will definitely suggest you read this lines thoroughly also. I have explained you this, but read this line thoroughly also. In case of any doubt, you can ask me freely. Okay, next important point is, student, sometime I hope you also do it. I have done it very times. For example, suppose I have purchased a chocolate of ₹5 rupees dairy milk. Yes, yeah, that's my favorite. So if I purchase that dairy milk chocolate from a market, 5 rupees, I have a 10 rupee note. I said to the shopkeeper, okay, just keep the 5 rupees. I will adjust it with the next transaction. Whenever I will come in the future, I will adjust it. Okay, you also do it. Okay, so students, until and unless it is a kind of deposit that we have made with the shopkeeper now, that okay, just keep it, we will adjust it in the future. But until and unless that supplier will apply this deposit in the next transaction as consideration, that it will not be considered as consideration. It means whenever next time I will go to that shopkeeper and I will say just give me this, for example, just give me a register. So until and unless such supplier applies this part of deposit which I have deposited earlier as consideration, it will not be covered as consideration. Okay, so it totally depends upon the will of the supplier. Yes. So now the next point is, students, services provided by the members of the joint venture to the joint venture and vice versa, or between the members of the joint venture. What does it mean, students? First of all, let's understand what do you mean by joint venture. Joint venture means an unincorporated, yes, it's an unincorporated temporary association. Why it is a temporary association? Because this association has been constituted for the limited purpose. It means they have a limited person. When that purpose will be completed, they will wind up that joint venture. Okay, now student, the next is members of the joint venture. If any member of joint venture is providing the service to any other member, so it will be known as that different person. Now they have used the distinct person. Here distinct person does not mean distinct person as per section 25. No, this distinct person means different person. And when different persons will give any kind of service to each other, it will be considered as supply. So yes, there shall be a taxable supply, and accordingly GST shall be levied. And even in the case of joint service supplied by joint venture to its member, it will be taxable also. Okay, and vice versa. Yes. But now the next point is, if cash calls are merely a transaction in money, so they are excluded from the definition of service and not taxable. What does it mean? It is very important, so let's understand it with the help of example number 30. For example, students, there are 4 members in the joint venture, including their operating member, and each one has contributed rupees 100 as part of their share. Now the total 400 amount is now they have collected total 400 amount because there are 4 members and each one has contributed rupees 100. Now what they do is, one of the operating member goes to the market and purchases a machinery for this rupees 400. Now student, when at the time they have provided their contribution of rupees 100, it is just merely a money now. So that cash call will not consider as a transaction of under GST. Okay, so it will not be the matter of GST. But in the next example, that is the example number 31, what one of the person has done is, they collected the money and that person has a machinery himself. He supplied that machinery. When that person supplied the machinery to the other person, it will not be a cash call. It is not just merely a cash call. He himself provide the machinery to the other person instead of their contribution now. So it will be attract GST. Okay. Okay, students. Now the next point is section 7 subsection 1 clause number B. What does it say? Yes, it said that import of services for a consideration whether or not in the furtherance of business. We have already covered it. Okay. Now the next thing is, yes, you can do these examples. If there is any query, you can ask me. And if you want to ask these examples in the live session, so students, I have almost every day I have live session on Unacademy which are free of cost for all students. Yes, they are free of cost for all students, so you can even join it. You can ask for the links for those sessions in the comment box also. Yes. Section 7 subsection 1 clause number C, that is the schedule number 1. Now students, even in the CA, CS, CMA examinations, and even in the graduation or post-graduation examination, this particular part has been repeated very much. Yes, it has been repeated many times. So it is very important. Schedule 1 said that there are some activities which are to be treated as supply even if they are made without any consideration. And how many kind of activities there are there? So there are particular 4 activities. How many activities? 4 activities. Okay. The very first activity said that if there is permanent transfer or disposal of business assets, it means if a businessman has any kind of asset, business asset. Now what do you mean by business asset? So definition of business asset is not given under GST. You just have to take the asset which is related to the business. That is a dictionary meaning. Yes. So whenever that person transferred their business asset on a permanent basis, it means they do not have any intention to take it back. on a permanent basis. So if they transfer their business asset on a permanent basis, even without consideration, it means there is no consideration involved, but on this asset which now they are transferring on permanent basis, they have claimed the input tax credit. So if they have claimed the ITC on this asset, we will consider is as supply. Okay, so even there is no consideration now, but the person has claimed the input tax credit on this asset, so it will be considered as supply under GST. That is the first part. Okay, so para 1 of schedule 1 of CGST 2017. Now para 2 said, whenever there is a supply between the related persons or distinct persons. Now what do you mean by related persons or distinct persons? So students, related persons means those who are related to each other. Okay, for example, if they are associated with each other as an employer-employee, but they have supplied outside the employment course, because in the employment course it is covered in the negative list, or they are partners of each other, they are director of any company, they are linked with each other. But if it is a case of family member, so student, in case of a family member, who will be known as related person? That is the very distant relative which we have not even seen yet. No, that is not the related person under GST. Under GST, related person means if they are considered for the family purpose. So suppose if this is a person, Chintamani, who is the individual, so spouse and children of Chintamani, they will be considered as family. Whoever wants to make this chart, they can make this chart. Okay. Second point is, students, the Chintamani's grandparents, that is grandmother or grandfather, parents, that is either mother or father, or brother or sister. Now the next thing, and why you have make these charts in a different manner? You can write down as a sequence term. No, student, actually what happens is, grandparents, parents, brother, sister, they will be considered as a related person of this individual only and only if they are wholly or mainly financially dependent on individual. Yes, if they are wholly or mainly financially dependent on that individual. Okay, if they are not dependent on that individual, they are not to be considered as family. Okay, but in the case of spouse or children, either they are dependent or not dependent, they will be considered as family, they will be considered as related person of the individual. Now the next point, who is considered as distinct person. So distinct person means, now the next point, who is considered as distinct person. Students, yes, one more important announcement. If you want to join me for the sessions of CA or CMA intermediate, so for the CA intermediate, I have the sessions of DT as well as IDT. That is your complete paper number 4. For the CMA, I have the sessions of CMA intermediate paper number 11, group 2 paper 11 IDT. If you want to join me with those sessions, you can ask for the sessions in the comment box. Okay, yes. Now student, if a person is when a person will be considered as distinct person, in the category of distinct person, you all know that every person has to take GST registration from every state. It means for each and every state a different registration is required to be taken, because GST registration is state wise, not the PAN basis, it is state wise. Okay, it means for every different state we have to take different registration, because in our GST identification number even our state code has been mentioned. Okay, now suppose if I have taken a registration and I have a branch in Haryana, okay, in state of Haryana. Now I have another branch in state of Punjab. Now student, I am supplying, for example, books from Haryana, and I am supplying calculators from Punjab. Okay, yes, exams are near, so books and calculators are revolving in our mind. So students, can I take one single registration for both the states? No, because for every state I have to take the separate registration from where I am doing the supply, doing the outward supply. Okay, so what will happen here is, but students, for every GST registration, how we can take the GST registration number, which is the mandatory document, PAN. It means in both GST my PAN shall be same now. So on the same base, on the same PAN, in whichever cities I have taken, in whichever states I have taken the registration, for each and every state I will become for myself as distinct person. Okay, so if even in the case of related person or even in the case of distinct person, if we are supplying any activity without any consideration, it will be considered as supply under GST. Now this is the point of distinct person, but establishment of distinct persons will also cover here. Now most of the students got confused in this point. They thought that distinct person and the establishment of distinct person is known as establishment of distinct person, but that is not correct. Establishment of distinct person means, student, there is a difference. There is a thin line between distinct and establishment of distinct person. A person will be considered as distinct person only and only from those states from where he has taken the GST registration. But in the case of establishment of distinct person, however a person has taken, either a person have taken the registration from a state or not taken the registration from another state, the establishment, that establishment will be known as establishment of distinct person. Let's understand with the help of an example. For example, if from Haryana I am supplying books, and from Punjab I am supplying petrol. Now we all know that on petrol it is a non-taxable supply, so I am not required to take the registration because supply must be for a taxable supply. It is a non-taxable. But still students, my establishments from Haryana and Punjab shall be known as establishment of distinct person, but for Haryana and Punjab, I myself will not be considered as distinct person. This is a thin line between these two terms. Okay. Now there is a para number 3. Para number 1 is permanent transfer of business assets on which ITC has been taken. Second is supply between related or distinct person. Now students, para number 3 said, if a person has a principal agent relationship as per para number 3. Now let's understand what is the principal agent relationship as per para number 3. Okay students, so let's understand it again with the help of an example. Yes, for sure. So students, suppose if there are two persons, suppose if there are two persons and one person is you. Yes, you my guys. So students, so girls and boys, just listen this. This is you and there is another person, for example your friend. You are saying that my friend is my agent. Agent means that person is working on my behalf. That means agent. Okay. You tell to your friend that agent, your friend is your agent. It means you are principal here. You are principal here. Now you think, ma'am, this is very easy. No, this is a little bit confusing. Just understand it. Now they said, you have told to your friend that I want to sell 100 televisions. Just look for a buyer who can buy the 100 televisions. Okay, he said okay. He go to the market and selects the prospective buyers who can take the TVs. He select one buyer and he said okay. Now what you will do is you will supply these 100 TVs to your friend and your friend will supply these 100 TVs to that buyer. Now student, what you assume? That are you going to charge the money of these 100 TV from your friend? No, na. You will say okay, whenever buyer will do the payment, we will take it. You will say this because he is just an agent. Now what your friend has done? Your friend has issued an invoice. Now what you assume? Invoice should be in the names of you or your friend. In the name of you, na. That is in the name of principal only, but your friend has issued the invoice in the name of him only. That is, invoice is in the name of friend. That is on agent. Now student, it means there is some misambiguity. What does it mean? There is some kind of scam here. It means what is happening behind the curtains, you have sell these 100 TV to your friend and now you tell to your friend, just act like a principal agent because in this category we can save our GST. Now what your friend has done? Your friend has further supplied these 100 TVs to buyer in the name of him only. So if it is a case, either the agent is a buying agent or a selling agent, if this is the particular case, so para number 3 will get into action and they will say, when you have supplied as a principal 100 TVs to your friend, which is without consideration, we are going to consider that supply as a case of supply under GST. Para number 3 of Schedule 1 of CGST Act 2017. I hope you got my point. Okay. Now students, the next is, yes, there is an important term here also, del creditor agent. It is Del creditor agent. So students, always remember del creditor agent is that person. Who is the del creditor agent? Del creditor agent is that selling agent who said that that I will bear the risk of non-payment if the buyer will not pay for you, and for that he charges some extra commission. Okay, now for the del creditor agent also, this invoice will be the main criteria that their transaction will be covered under para 3 or not. Okay, now students, the next point is that is para number 4. But always remember, for principal agent relationship, agent can either be buying agent or selling agent, but for the del creditor agent, agent shall always be a selling agent. Okay, because he reduces the risk of payment, so obviously he will be a selling agent. Next is point number 4, that is para number 4 of schedule 1 of CGST Act 2017. Let's understand it. Now students, in the para number 4 they said that if there is a import of service, now you might be thinking, ma'am, section 7 subsection 1 clause B, this is something different. Import of service plus it is in the course or furtherance of business. Yes, because from 3 basic parameters 2 must be satisfied always. If at least 2 basic parameters must be satisfied. If these 2 parameters are not satisfied, it will not be considered as supply under GST. Okay, so it is in the course or furtherance of business. But as it is the case of schedule number 1, so there is no consideration involved. Consideration is not involved here. So as 2 basic parameters are satisfying here, it will be considered as supply under GST. But yes, there is a trick here. Import of service must be made from a related person. Yes, import of services must be made from a related person or the establishment of distinct persons. Okay, if this is the category, so yes, it will be considered as para 4 schedule 1 CGST. Now what is the difference between section 7 subsection 1 clause B and this, that is para 4 of schedule 1 of CGST Act 2017, as both are for the import of services? Import of goods is not covered here. So student, the basic difference between these two is, in section 7 subsection 1 clause B, they said that there must be import of services for consideration whether or not in the course of furtherance of business. It means there is no condition of that services must be imported from a related person or distinct person, but yes, that condition is applicable here because there is no consideration. So yes, they have considered this. They have considered this point here. There must be import of service for in the course of furtherance of business from related person. Yes, it must be from a related person or establishment of distinct person, and consideration might not be involved here. Okay, yes students, so you have covered the schedule number 1. I hope you like this. Yes, this have come in the examination very much times. Yes, it has been come in the examination many times for the 3 to 4 marks. Now students, if you are going to join your classes for your December attempt, that if you are going to attempt the CMA Intermediate Group 2 in the December, so students, on Unacademy I have taken this batch for IDT Indirect Taxation. You will get a chance to study with the India's top educators on Unacademy. Student, it has so much benefit here that you can join us. Here is our team for the CMA Intermediate Group 2. We all are your educator students. My name is Professor Aayushi Bansal. I am going to teach you IDT. My timings are on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Okay, so you can join for the subscription. Plus yes, if you are going to join for the subscription on Unacademy, you can use our code, which is study at home. Study at home. I am writing it on the screen. Students, by using this code, you will get a benefit of availing maximum discount. Yes, already prices are very economical on Unacademy. Yes, plus you can get a maximum discount. Plus students, you will get our exclusive offers if you use our code. Okay, that is study at home. And yes, you can join me on Unacademy for the free live sessions also for CA, CS, CMA. For CMA Intermediate, I am available for plus session also, that you can cover your complete course with me on Unacademy. Second, those who want to join the classes for your CA Intermediate, that is for your CA Intermediate paper number 4, you can join me on my website. My website address is aayushibansalclasses.in. It's aayushibansalclasses.in. Okay, prices are very economical also there. So if you want to join me for CMA intermediate, you can join me on Unacademy. Now if you want to join me for your CA intermediate, you can join me on my website. Okay students, great. Now let's start with the next topic. We have covered all these points, okay, in a very detailed manner. Yes, for sure. Yes, these are all the kinds of which we have already covered. You can do these examples, students. If you get any query in these examples, you can ask me. Yes, you can ask me, guys. Next is director remuneration. Next is page number 26, director remuneration. Now what is it? Students, the first question, now the next question is whether all the directors including the MD is an employee of the company. No, because students, they have a contractual relationship. If this contractual relationship is of the master and servant, so if they have a contractual relationship of master and servant, that is employer and employee, so it will not be considered under GST because it will be covered under schedule number 3, negative list. So MD is not the employee of the company. Even the non-executive directors are not the employee of the company, and independent director, nominee directors are not the employee of the company. So we can say there are only two persons who are the employees of the company, which is whole-time director and executive director. Instead of this, if unless and until they have mentioned particular in any examination, any question, you will consider all the directors as not the employees of the company. Now what will happen, students? If it is a case of, just understand it, what will happen with the director remuneration? If it is a case of whole-time director or which director? Executive director. So these are not the employees of the company, na? So as they are not the employees of the company, just tell me fast. Yes students, tell me fast what I have told you. You know, always I just trick you guys, na? So yes, they are, because they are the whole time director. Now if they are not the employees of the company, why they will give their whole time to the company? Okay, so whole time director and executive directors will be considered as, just wait guys. So whole time directors and executive directors are, yes, they are employee of the company. So students, whenever they will give service to the company, na, it will be covered under negative list, schedule 3 negative list. It will be not be considered as supply under GST. But in the case of other directors, as they are the employees of the company, but we know, students, we have already done in a regular class, they are not the employees of the company, but we have covered that if a director who is not an employee of the company, if he or she provides their services to the company, so it will be covered under reverse charge mechanism. Okay, yes. Now the next point is, we have done with the point of director remuneration. Now the next thing, now how can we find with the income tax that this director is an employee or not? So students, in income tax we have seen that if they are the employee of the company, they will be covered under section 192, TDS under section 192. So you can find out from there also. Okay. Next is fringe benefits. Student, the compensation to employees in the form of money is not a supply. Okay. But if they are providing it as fringe benefits, so they are liable to tax until and unless they are not exempted. Fringe benefits means other benefits. Okay. These all points we have already covered. Next is fringe benefits, that is reverse charge mechanism applies. Students, as I said you, under the fringe benefits, there shall be a taxation, but yes, if those fringe benefits are taken from the unregistered supplier, so RCM will be applicable there. Distinct person under section 25, I have covered these part already, distinct person as well as the establishment of distinct person. Yes. So that's why I'm saying you these marathon revision series will be very interesting, guys. Now the next thing is, students, if an employer is providing to the employee a gift of up to rupees 50,000 in a financial year. So students, if they are giving the gifts, first of all, giving the gifts to the employee, it will not be covered under the negative list. Only services given by the employee to the employer in the course of business, it will be covered in the negative list. Okay. So this is a case of gifts. If gifts are of the value of rupees up to 50,000, so no GST shall be leviable, but in a financial year. But in a financial year, if employee receive gifts exceeding rupees 50,000, students, so GST shall be levied. Yes. Okay. So I hope you got this point. Very good. Next question, example 53 देखिए. Mrs. Guideline Academy Private Limited gives Diwali gifts to each employee worth rupees 75,000. It means for each employee the amount is exceeding rupees 50,000. So students, it will be considered as supply and it will be leviable to GST on the entire value. Okay, yes, because they are the related person and this gift is outside the course of employment. Next is supply to agent or by agents. We have covered this point, that is para 3 schedule 1 principal agent relationship. You can do this example with the help of my example which I have given you. Okay, these all points we have covered. You can do this from these examples, procurement agents or law. If you get any query, you can ask me. Next is importation of service. So if the person is has imported any services from a related person or from his establishment outside India in the course of furtherance of business for which he do not have paid any kind of consideration. So para 4 schedule 1 of CGST. We have all covered there. Okay. Next is students schedule 2 of CGST Act 2017. Now students, to understand the schedule 2 of CGST Act 2017, I will tell you one point through which you will be able to do the complete entire chapter here. Okay, that is the complete entire schedule 2 here. What is that point? Let's understand. So students, just keep it in your mind that whenever, if you want to make this chart, you can make it also. Whenever there will be a transfer of title, that is a transfer of ownership, plus there will be a transfer of possession. It means if ownership and possession both are given to the another person, so it will be a case of supply of goods. It will be a case of supply of goods. But if there is a transfer only of possession, it means title or ownership has not been transferred, there is transfer only of possession. For example, students, suppose I give you this calculator to use it in your examination and you have to give it back to me. It means I just only give the possession to you, right to use this. Okay, not the ownership. Owner is me only. So in the case, I am supplying you my services. Okay, so if there is a transfer of title plus possession, it will be a case of supply of goods, but otherwise it will be a case of supply of services. Now, Schedule 2 specifies that which activity shall be covered under supply of goods or supply of services. Okay, now with the help of this point which I have told you, we will be able to complete this table. Okay, first of all, if there is a transfer of title in goods, yes, if there is a transfer of title in goods, that is ownership. If ownership has been transferred, so possession has automatically been transferred. Okay, so it is even if it has not been implied, we will think about it. So it is supply of goods. Transfer of right in goods to share or goods a share undivided in goods without transfer of title, so without any second thinking, without any second thought, just supply of service. Transfer of title in goods under an agreement which stipulates that property in goods shall part as a future date. Now there is a transfer of title in goods for which the property, that is the possession, shall be passed at a future date, for example the hire purchase system and all. So yes, supply of goods. That means they have transferred the title, but they will transfer the possession of the property at a later date. Okay, no worry, supply of goods. Next is the case of land and building. So students, first of all, goods includes movable property only, okay, not the immovable property, and land and building are immovable property. So ma'am, why they are here? Because students, it will not be considered as a case of supply of goods, it will be a case of supply of service, as they are providing their land or building on lease, tenancy, easement. It means on rent to another person. It means they are supplying the service to the another person to use it, not the ownership. Second is lease or letting of any building, including for business or commerce. So building might be a commercial purpose, for residential purpose, for any purpose. It will be a supply of service. They are giving it on rent purpose. Next is treatment or process. It means, students, have you ever done that you have given your clothes to a tailor and you said to that tailor that tailor uncle, please just do a thing for me, just stitch it, okay, and make a very nice dress from it. You do it, na? Yes. So in that case, when tailor returned the dresses to us, what we said, tailor has given a very good services, not the goods, because the material is ours only. It means they have doing a treatment or process on that material, na? So it means they have supplied the service. So it means whenever any treatment or process which is applied to another person's good, for example on our material, so it will be case of supply of services. Next is transfer of business assets. Now understand it very clearly. Okay, students, in the case of transfer of business of assets, the very first point is goods forming part of business are transferred or disposed by the owner, whether or not for a consideration. Now students, this whether or not from a consideration has been omitted now, as they have specified it. If there shall be no consideration, only those 4 points will be covered here, that is transfer of business assets, permanent purpose for which ITC has been taken. Okay, so you can cut it out. Goods forming part of business are transferred or disposed by the owner. So yes, it will be case of supply of goods without any second thought. Next is the owner uses or allows to use business asset for personal use. They just allow to use it. They do not have transferred the title or ownership to second person. So it will be a case of supply of services. Okay. The next is, students, the next point is very important and a little bit tricky also. So try to understand it. If the owner who ceases to be a taxable person, it means the owner of that goods is now not a taxable person. It is a non-taxable person. Taxable person means that person who has taken the registration or yet not taken the registration, but liability to take registration has been arised. Okay. So after becoming a non-taxable person, the business assets, if a person who is a taxable person, now that person ceases to be a taxable person but becomes a non-taxable person, so it will be assumed that that person has supplied those goods in the course or furtherance of business, because now that is not a taxable person, he is now a non-taxable person. So in this case we will consider it as supply of goods. But for this point, that is taxable to non-taxable supply of goods, assuming part has two exceptions. The first of all, if the business is transferred as a going concern to another person, so we will not consider that it has been implied that it has been supply of goods. Okay. The second is, now business is carried on by a personal representative, and now that personal representative is deemed to be a taxable person. Okay, so these are two exceptions for this point. It means in these two cases the implied provision shall not apply. Next is supply of services. In all these cases, students, renting of immovable property, so yes, it is a supply of service. However, residential dwelling, because under the section of residential, under the section of exemption from GST, we will understand that residential dwelling is exempted from GST. Okay, next is construction of a complex building, civil structure or a part thereof. Now students, just understand it, what is happening here. It is very important. Okay, students, as we all know that land or building, I have a building beside me. Can I move it? No. So it is an immovable property. Okay. So students, as land or building are not movable property or they are immovable property, so they are not goods. This is a fact. But now they said that if any person has constructed a land or building or supplies it to any other person, so will it consider as supply of goods? No. Will it consider as supply of services? Let's understand this, what will happen here. Now students, whenever a person will complete the building, there is a requirement that they have to take the certificate. It means the competent authority will issue a certificate of completion certificate that yes, now this property has been completed. Okay. So students, the very first point here I am covering is, if the person, buyer, has given any part of consideration to the seller either before issuing of completion certificate by competent authority, obviously, completion certificate, or the second is before its first occupation, that is the first occupation of the property, because we assume that if any person has occupied that property, it means yes, the property has been completed, or its first occupation, whichever is earlier, whichever event is taken earlier, occupation. Okay, whichever is earlier. So if any consideration has been paid before this point, that whichever is earlier date, so it will be considered as supply of service. Ma'am, now why we are considering as supply of service? Because student, we assume that if the buyer has paid any kind of consideration to that person in advance, so that person will construct that building according to the buyer only. But if buyer has given entire consideration, it means not a single penny have been given before these dates, so it will be covered under negative list. That is, no GST shall be covered here. Okay, yes, great. And yes students, one more important, ma'am, there are so many announcements. Yes, for you there are so many surprises. There is a mega revision free test series, first time ever for CMA Intermediate Group 2 June 22 attempt. Students, it will cover the complete syllabus for the June 2022 attempt. It will be included 20 multiple choice questions. You will get 30 minutes to solve it, and the first ranker, either you are doing CA, CS, CMA or any other course, you can join it. Yes, you can opt for this test if you have a knowledge of IDT. And student, the first winner will get 1000 rupees Amazon gift voucher from our side. Yes, okay. And the paper of IDT is on 17th June at 3 p.m. If you want the link, so please write it in the comment box. Okay. Now students, the next is temporary transfer or permitting the use of enjoyment of any intellectual property right. So if it is temporary transfer, so obviously the title of ownership is not there, so supply of service. Okay, all other points are same, you can do it from here. Next is composite supply. Students, composite supply, what do you mean by composite supply? Composite supply means, I have already told you under section 8 of the Gst Act 2017, but we have covered in a regular session. Composite supply means when there is a combination of two or more goods or services or both for a single price, and if that combination is naturally bundled in the ordinary course of business. For example, if a person is supplying mobile phone with this SIM ejector or charger, so it is a composite supply. Now there are two cases. First of all, work contract, and second is restaurant. Student, in case of work contract service, the contractor is assumed to provide labor plus material both to the second person. Now, what will it be constitute? Supply of goods or supply of service? So students, schedule 2 entry number 6 has clearly mentioned that it will be considered as supply of services, not supply of goods. Second is of case of restaurant service. Student, that is supply by way of or as part of any other service or in any other manner whatsoever of goods being food or any other article. So they are actually talking about the restaurant service, but it is other than alcoholic liquid for human consumption, because alcoholic liquid for human consumption is outside the purview of GST. Now, in the case of restaurant service, they have provided us food plus services. Ma'am, how they are providing service? For example, they are serving the food to us, their interior decoration, their furniture and all. So even in this case, student, it has been clearly mentioned under schedule 2 entry 6 para B. Okay, so if they have write this, so just understand it is the case of restaurant service, that it will be considered as supply of service, not as supply of goods. Okay, so next points you can do it, students. We have covered these points already, that the transfer of business assets permanently, if it is a case of permanently, so what will happen? If it is a case of temporary, so what will happen? We have already covered it. Next case is tenancy rights taxability. We have covered this point also. You can understand it with, you can do this example, that is tenancy right. It means there is no transfer of title of ownership. Okay. Now all these points have been covered. I am scrolling these pages, so you will get a satisfaction kind of that here. Yes, we have covered all the points here. Okay, students. So now the next point here is, yes, we have covered all these points. Composite supply, I have told you about this also. Okay. All are these examples, students. Just do the examples. And if you want to do the questions with me, with previous year questions, important questions, you can join me in the free live session. You can ask for the links. Okay. Now the next student, that which are the non-taxable supply. I have told you non-taxable supply, that is section 7 subsection 2. Supply excludes. It means that is a non-taxable supply. First of all, the supply which are covered in the schedule 3, and the second is such activities or transactions which are undertaken by our government as public authority, which are notified in the notification recommendation on the GST Council. Okay. Now student, let's understand schedule number 3. In this particular session we are going to cover our 3 important schedules. Schedule 1 which we have covered, schedule 2 have covered. Now it is a time to cover the schedule number 3, negative list. And yes student, now in the negative list there are total 8 entries. How many entries are there? 8 entries. Very important point. In fact, all the schedules, that is schedule 1, 2 and 3, all these 3 schedules are very important. Students, just understand one thing. Whenever you are going to write the schedule number of the CGST Act, that schedule number must be in the Roman number. Okay, only then you will get the marks for it. First case is when the services are given by employer to employer in the course of or in relation to employment. We have already covered it. Second is student, whenever court or tribunal, wherever the court or tribunal has provided their service, that is they are providing any judgment and all, it will be covered under negative list. It means on their supplying of their service, They are talking about the court or tribunal, not the advocates. Okay, for advocates there is another point, not the court. This is only the court or tribunal. So services by court or tribunal will covered under the negative list. Third is, if any member of parliament or students, if any other member whose powers have been mentioned in our Indian constitution, for example, our Prime Minister, President of India, Vice President of India, and the CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India, all their powers are mentioned in our Indian constitution. So if those persons are providing any kind of service, it will be covered under negative list. Okay, next is services by case of funeral, burial, crematorium, mortuary, etc. of a deceased person. Obviously it will not reflect any kind of GST. Next is sale of land or building. But in case of student sale of land or building, understand one thing. First of all, even you can write it here. Okay, you can elaborate it like this. If it is a case of sale of land, so it will be covered under negative list. Yes, but negative list will act as land is in the mind, so land has been landed on the page also, negative list. But if it is a case of sale of land plus building or building, okay, only sale of land has been covered in a negative list. But if it is a case of sale of land plus building both or only building, so students, the 2 points will arise, that consideration, when the consideration have been paid, if the consideration have been paid in before of those 2 points, so what will happen? Supply of service. But if entire consideration, it means not even a single penny has been received in advance, entire consideration has been received after the due dates, that is after issuance of completion certificate or its first occupation, whichever is earlier, so in that case it will be covered in the negative list. Okay, just understand this point, this is very important, guys. Okay, next is actionable claim. Actionable claim means, for example, right of fixed deposit, right to claim the amount of fixed deposit, right to claim the amount of rent, arrear of rents, that's all. It means that claim on which if a particular event will take place, we are able to take the action. So it will be covered under negative list. But 3 actionable claims are there on which there are no negative list. It means if those 3 actions will be there, it will be covered under GST. Now ma'am, which are those actionable claims? Lottery, betting and gambling. Yes, so on lottery, betting and gambling, GST shall be levied. Now student, there are 2 another important points here which are related to custom. It will be covered under GST, yes. Okay, as IGST shall be levied on the imports, that's why. So first point is, if there is a supply of goods from a place in the non-taxable territory to another place in the non-taxable territory without such a goods entering into India, it means they are saying if any goods from non-taxable territory is supplied to non-taxable territory without even entering that goods to India, so is there any kind of role of India in it? No, so that is a negative list. We do not have any kind of role in there. Second is students, point number 8, supply of warehouse goods to any person before clearance of home consumption. It means if any person have imported some goods and what is happening here, that those warehouse goods have been supplied to any other person even before coming for the clearance for the home consumption. So in that case, student, the person has imported some goods, those goods are in the warehouse, it means into bond have been signed, custom part, yes. But now what is happening here is that person has supplied those goods from the warehouse to the another person even without clearing for the home consumption, so this is a negative list. Entry number 8, point B, supply of goods by the consignee to any other person. But how that person is supplying that goods to any other person? That person, that consignee, is endorsing or transferring the document of title to the goods after the goods have been dispatched from the port of origin located outside India. But student, the home consumption clearance has not been taken place. So in both the cases, when the home consumption clearance has not been taken place, it shall not be considered as supply under GST. Okay. Next is section 7, subsection 3. I have already told you it constitutes supply of goods which is not a supply of service, or supply of service not a supply of goods. Not very much important now. Yes. Next is students. Next they said that services provided by the PSPs to the state government by way of transportation of payments against consideration in the form of the fee is exempt. But ma'am, why this exemption will take place? First of all, it must be a pure service, and second, it must be provided as a composite supply. It means that is not only the purpose to provide the transportation to that person. Okay. Now, ma'am, actually we are getting some confusion at this point. Okay, do not worry students, actually this is a part of exemption under GST. I will tell you the complete entire exemption under GST in the next session. Okay, so we will cover the entire exemption under GST part in our next session. So all these points will be covered there, so don't worry, just revise till this point which I have told you. And if you like this session, so what are you going to do? If you like this session, just share this session with all your friends. And yes, do not forget to like this video, subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so that you will get the timely notifications also. And if you want to join me for the free live sessions on Unacademy, just drop a message here. Okay, thank you and have a nice day students.